What if Obi Wan Kenobi led a clone rebellion against the Empire? Alright, let's get right into it. Our story begins on Coruscant, where former clone captain and Commander Rex was overseeing his newly formed resistance against the Empire. Over the last year or so, Rex had formed a group of citizens and clones who had their chips removed or defected. It was a rather small group, but it was growing extremely slowly, and Rex spent his life fighting for the Republic. Even if it was now dead, he would continue to fight to bring it back. One day, he was rather discouraged about everything. He wanted more intel on everything going on. So he wore the uniform of a clone officer, and he sat in a bar among fellow clone troopers, all of which still had their chips activated. Rex listened in on conversations, keeping to himself, until a few members of the 501st walked in. Rex hid his face and listened intently on their whispered conversation. The small group was talking about a new leader, and Rex was shocked to learn the 501st was now led by someone that wielded a red lightsaber. The clones described him as a tall, brooding, armored man, maybe even a droid. He was no Jedi, yet he held Jedi powers. Rex couldn't believe it. The 501st was once led by the great Anakin Skywalker, and now they were led by... Rex listened for a name, and finally got it. They were now led by someone called Vader. On the surface of Coruscant, a group of senators, including Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, were desperate for any answer to the Empire. They both thought it was too early for any sort of rebellion, but something has recently started to change their mind. Bail learned from some friends in the underworld that there was actually a small clone rebellion beginning to form, and so on this day, Bail ventured into the underworld, trying to find this small group. And after a few hours of searching, Bail saw someone wearing a clone officer uniform sneaking into a small abandoned warehouse, and Bail called after him. The clone turned, and Bail was surprised to see the weirdly recognizable face of Rex. Bail couldn't recognize many clones from each other, but he knew Rex worked with his good friends Ahsoka and her former master. Bail approached Rex, and the two of them discussed everything Rex has been doing here. How he has been trying to jumpstart a clone rebellion, but things were moving slowly. Rex said the clones need more voices, more leaders, and he said perhaps Bail can be one of them. But Bail was unsure of this. The Empire was watching him extremely closely, but he had an idea that might work. Not long ago, Bail and Obi-Wan promised to keep his location a secret, but this clone operation could have real promise with Obi-Wan's help. So Bail decided this would be worth it, and he gave Rex coordinates for a small cave on Tatooine, but he did not tell Rex who was there. On Tatooine, a few days later, Obi-Wan Kenobi was sitting in silence, looking down at his lightsaber, along with the lightsaber of Anakin Skywalker. He desperately missed his former Padawan, former friend, brother, but every time he thought of Anakin, he could only remember his screaming, the pain, the anger, the dark side. Obi-Wan did what he had to do, leaving him for dead, and now he lived only to train Luke Skywalker when the time was right, to help take down the Empire. But that would not be for many, many years. Over the last year, Obi-Wan searched for a purpose, a way to spend his time in the Force, a way to find Qui-Gon in the Force. But every day, his connection to the Force seemed to get worse on this terrible, unforgiving planet. He grabbed his lightsabers and began walking out of his cave. He would bury them for the time being until Luke is ready. But as Obi-Wan reached the entrance of the cave, he saw someone approaching it. Someone was here for him. Obi-Wan held his lightsaber inside of his poncho now, waiting until the man got out of the sun and Obi-Wan could clearly see his face. Rex. Somehow the clones have found him. Obi-Wan ignited his lightsaber, telling Rex that he made a grave mistake coming here. But Rex simply put his hands up, completely understanding why Obi-Wan would fear him, and he put his blaster on the ground, saying he was not here to fight. He just wanted to talk. Obi-Wan put his lightsaber away, looking behind Rex to see that he was alone, then invited the clone inside. And from here, Rex would explain everything to Obi-Wan. He would explain the inhibitor chips, how the clones had no choice, how the clones were created to wipe out the Jedi without their knowledge. The two sat around a fire for longer than they could keep track of, discussing everything that happened over the last year. Rex considered bringing up Anakin, but he knew the great Jedi must have died with the way Obi-Wan seemed to be avoiding the topic. Eventually, Rex asked Obi-Wan why he was here of all places, and Obi-Wan was convinced that he could trust Rex, so he told the truth. He said he was protecting a young boy, looking into the distance, and saying the boy was the son of Anakin Skywalker. Rex chuckled, remembering all the times he helped Anakin secretly talk to Padme, and said he was thinking of Anakin just the other day. Rex told Obi-Wan about what he heard in the bar, saying he felt terrible for the 501st. They were no longer led by Anakin, of course, but instead by some machine monster called Vader. Obi-Wan was frozen. Vader. The name from his nightmares. The name Anakin was given by Palpatine. Vader. And now he turned. Rex could see the fear in his eyes as Obi-Wan said, "Anakin is alive." And in this moment, Obi-Wan decided Luke was not safe from Anakin, Vader, and the Empire, so he asked Rex what they must do to bring the Empire down. And the two of them talked for a long while once again, but this time about a plan. And eventually, the two of them would get together, traveling to Kamino, as Obi-Wan informed Owen and Beru that in order to keep Luke safe, he must go on this mission. On Kamino, Rex and Kenobi landed, disguising themselves as Imperial officers, freely walking through the area. Rex had reason to believe that the Empire was close to deciding to shut down the cloning program for good, from his spies on Coruscant, and after some time, the two of them found a Kaminoan engineer named Arla. They asked her what the Kaminoans thought about the Empire, and when she began to slightly express disdain for the Empire, the Jedi and clone dropped their disguises, saying they want to fight back, but they need the help of the Kaminoans. Arla was interested now, and she said that many of the Kaminoans here have begun to question the Empire, thinking they will be torn down soon, and they would be interested in fighting back. This was good. Arla quickly organized a meeting between Obi-Wan, Rex, and the recently formed Kaminoan Council that was focused on maintaining a relationship with the Empire. The meeting was interesting, as Kenobi and Rex learned that the Empire was slowly but surely pushing clones out and bringing civilians in. It was a slow process that would ultimately lead to the clones being cast away, and the Kaminoans being out of jobs and money. They were greedy, but that greed would help Kenobi and Rex, as they told the Kaminoans that they want to set up an operation to get ahead of the Empire. And if the operation succeeds, the Kaminoans will be in business for a long, long time. And so, for the next year, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Rex would be granted access to an entire laboratory in a lower area below the seas of Kamino. Their operation would be secret, and the goal would be to bring as many clones to their side as they could. Over time, it became a rather simple and repetitive process. A clone battalion would return to Kamino after a mission, and the Kaminoans would give certain groups at a time a special mission down in the lower levels of Kamino. As the clones traveled down there, they would be knocked out with a non-lethal gas, and while they were knocked out, Kenobi, Rex, and a group of medical clones that got bigger every single day would perform surgery on the knocked-out clones. When they eventually woke up, they felt free for the first time, but along with the freedom, they expressed immediate regret, and every time, Kenobi and Rex would give the healed clones a speech about what happened. Rex described how they were enslaved, treated like droids, unable to resist an order to kill their Jedi leaders, and Obi-Wan described how Palpatine was the real treasonous person, not the Jedi. He led both sides of the war, all for his own personal power gain. And without fail, the healed clones were angry at the Empire, angry at Palpatine, more than willing to fight for their brothers, fight for the Republic they were born to protect, joining in the clone uprising. But it was not going to happen for some time, at least not the end goal. All of them just had to be good soldiers for the time being, do what was required of them, and in time, they would gather together, they would have their revenge, they would take back the Republic. But they could not act yet, as the newly healed clone engineers on Kamino were building a device that would be able to disable every single inhibitor chip without killing the clones. This operation was led by Commander Cody, who was extremely grateful to be reunited with Obi-Wan and Rex without the influence of the chip. It would take a long time, and it was nearly completed, but they would need more time. And every day, hundreds more clones were informed of this uprising that would eventually happen. This included Hauser, Wolf, Gregor, Gree, the Bad Batch, so many clones healed from this chip. But as more clones learned of this, the leaks began to expand, and eventually, Emperor Palpatine stood in his office with the bounty hunter Boba Fett. Boba was a clone himself, and he'd made quite the name for himself with the rise of the Empire. Palpatine felt a disturbance in the Force, like something was off with his Grand Army, and so he was deploying Boba Fett to Kamino to be his eyes and ears of everything going on down there. Boba was getting a huge payment for this, and so he took off for Kamino. When he finally arrived, he landed his ship on the side of a building where it would be hidden, and he flew to an emergency entrance, hacking his way inside, stealing clone trooper armor for disguise. And over time, Boba would watch as clones would go into the lower levels of Kamino, coming out with a different attitude. It was strange, and Boba would go on to access these areas late at night when only a few clones were standing guard. Boba investigated the area secretly, and he found many surgery tables, medical droids, and also research on some sort of device that the clones were building, research on the medical chips that were inside of these brains of the clones. Boba got the information, transmitting all of it to the Emperor's office. But right before it could finish transmitting, someone came up behind Boba, a clone in orange armor, asking what he was doing down here. And Boba, wearing regular clone armor, said he must be lost and tried to move past Cody. But Cody snatched the datapad and saw this clone was transmitting data to the Emperor. Cody tried to stop the transfer, but a cable wrapped around his arm, pulling him to the ground. Boba grabbed the datapad, kicking Cody, running through the facility. Cody groaned and sounded the alarm, so Rex, Obi-Wan, and the security team was alerted of what was going on. Kenobi and Rex woke up quickly and listened as Cody described everything. They took off running through the area, looking for this clone, and Obi-Wan found him on an elevator going to the surface. Rex and a few others tried shooting at Boba, but the elevator was escalating, but Kenobi managed to jump up to it, just in time. Once the elevator reached the surface, Boba dove to a corner where all of his gear was hidden, and he threw a smoke grenade at the ground. He took off running, putting on his jetpack, and called for his ship. Obi-Wan ran through the smoke, deflecting blasts from Boba, rolling away as Boba shot a rocket at him. It was just like his fight with Jango. The bounty hunter was hidden behind a pole as his ship came into view, and Boba flew towards it, but Obi-Wan was ready for the battle this time, throwing his lightsaber, cutting through the jetpack. Boba flew towards it, trying to slow down, but the jetpack was failing him, and he crashed into the engine of his own ship, starting a chain reaction of explosions, and the bounty hunter fell forever, with his exploding ship into the unforgiving seas of Kamino. And the datapad was sitting on the platform. But Obi-Wan was too late. The data had been transferred to the Emperor. All of a sudden, the work of the clone uprising had to be escalated to be done very soon. The device to shut down the inhibitor chips would need to be finished now, or all of their work would be in vain. In hyperspace, though, 5 Imperial Star Destroyers flew through it towards Kamino. Upon receiving the data from Boba, there was no hesitation from Palpatine to send a destruction team to the planet, and they were led by Darth Vader himself. The plan was simple: arrive above Kamino, blow the facilities into the water, leave no survivors. And by this time, every single clone on Kamino was part of the uprising. There were around 10,000 of them here, spread throughout the facilities, and they were all loading up for a fight. They didn't have Star Destroyers here, and so every single one of them knew that everything depended on the device being built down in the basement. In the basement, Kenobi, Cody, Rex, and the others watched as the clone engineers were putting the finishing touches on their ultimate device. If it worked, it would send a frequency that disabled every inhibitor chip in the area, and the clones would not fire upon Kamino. And eventually, Darth Vader watched from the bridge as he and the other Star Destroyers emerged from hyperspace. They got within firing range, and when they were ready, Vader ordered them to fire. But on Kamino, the clone engineers hacked into the communications of the Star Destroyers. It was now or never. There was no time for tests, no time for anything except success. And with everyone down here knowing they would either win or lose in the next moment, the clones sent out the frequency. Above Kamino, Vader watched, expecting the firepower to rain down. But nothing happened. Instead, he turned to see all of the clones grabbing at their heads. The human officers on board ordered them to fire, but instead the clones turned, pointing their blasters at the officers and at Vader. And the Dark Lord realized now that the device Boba had discovered, exactly what it was. Somehow, the inhibitor chips were shut off. The clones were doing what always came first for them, protecting their brothers. And Vader ignited his red lightsaber. Everyone on this ship was already dead. On Kamino, the clone uprising group celebrated as the Star Destroyers were not firing, and 4 of the Star Destroyers contacted Kamino, telling them they would transport the uprising group back to Coruscant, where they would shut down the chips for the clones, and take them back to Coruscant, where they would take the Republic from Palpatine. This was good. Everything was going well. But one Star Destroyer was not transmitting anything. It was like they'd gone radio silent. Clones were boarding transports to get onto the 4 Star Destroyers in contact, and Obi-Wan, Cody, and Rex were preparing the shutdown device for transport. But as they did, a loud thud, like someone landing from the sky, was heard throughout the facility. Darth Vader landed on the surface of Kamino, using the Force to crush the engines of the first transport, sending it crashing into the water. Clones looked on at him, a looming figure of darkness, as he ignited his lightsaber again, moving forward, cutting down everyone in his path, looking for the shutdown device. He strode through the sterile corridors of the Kamino facilities with a purpose unlike any other. The hum of machinery and distant echoes created an unsettling atmosphere as he moved through the area. Vader's heavy footsteps moved as he encountered clusters of clone troopers stationed to protect the valuable device. But Vader was easily able to take them. Each swing of his lightsaber was deadly, swiftly destroying the defenders as if they were mere extensions of the facility's metallic walls. The storm of red energy left no room for resistance as Vader continued on, leaving a trail of fallen clones in his wake. Thousands were aboard transports and unable to help as Vader continued on. Room after room, confrontations intensifying, the clash of lightsaber against blaster fire resonating through the halls, creating a chaotic swirl of destruction. The clone troopers, though skilled, were no match for the relentless power of Vader. His imposing figure advanced through the facility like an unstoppable force of nature, his dark presence casting a shadow over the once orderly Kaminoan halls. And as he cut down the final ones in his way, Vader descended down the elevator, and waiting for him at the bottom, none other than Obi Wan Kenobi. It was just the two of them, and the loud, metallic breathing filled the air. Both lightsabers were ignited, and Vader moved angrily for his old master. His red lightsaber carved through the air to kill Obi-Wan, stop this uprising. Obi-Wan countered with a defensive finesse, parrying each blow with skill, as he understood he was protecting the galaxy. They weaved between pillars and platforms of the lower levels, Vader's heavy footsteps moving through the chamber as he pressed the attack, while Obi-Wan used the environment to his advantage. Sparks flew as lightsabers met, and as they hold on to each other in a lightsaber lock, Vader sees an opening. He was able to disarm Obi-Wan, and he swung for the killing blow, but he was knocked backwards suddenly by 2 blasts from the other room. Captain Rex stood firing at Vader and hit him with 3 blasts before Vader reached out with the Force, grabbing Rex with a choke, pulling him in close. Vader hesitated for only a moment, then stabbed Rex right through the gut. Rex removed his helmet, looked up at Vader and said, "This is for Anakin," pulling out a thermal detonator. Rex closed his eyes, and Vader was frozen in shock as the detonator exploded. Now the room was shaking. Through the smoke, Obi-Wan couldn't see either of them. He got up slowly, making his way back to Cody, trying to make sure Rex's sacrifice did not go in vain, and the device was finally ready to be loaded onto a transport. As Kenobi and Cody boarded their transport, they both looked down to the bottom area where, somewhere, Vader and Rex were lying together, and they boarded the Star Destroyer with the device, preparing to move to Coruscant. In the lower level, alarms were blaring, the room was beginning to fill up with water from the explosion, and Darth Vader was slumped on the wall, unable to move, accepting his death. But before he could go, Rex somehow managed to crawl over to Vader, laying on the wall next to him. Vader's mask was blown off, and he looked at Rex with his own eyes as the two of them lay there together. Rex said, "You know, Skywalker, I always knew you'd be the death of me." And the two of them died as the entire area sunk. On Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine would never stand a chance. Vader was his last hope. Kenobi and Cody emerged above the planet, accessing the comms of all the clones, and used the shutdown device to disable the inhibitor chips. From there, Kenobi landed on the surface, with thousands of clones behind him as they marched through the Emperor's palace. The Red Guards were taken down with ease. Human officers and clones still loyal to Palpatine were completely outnumbered, and eventually, Obi-Wan entered the Emperor's office with a squad of clones behind him. From space, Star Destroyers aimed at his office. From the ground and apartment buildings, snipers aimed at him, and from inside the room, he was surrounded. He snarled, saying they would all pay. But a moment later, a blast hole emerged from his forehead. Cody shot him dead, saying that this was for the Republic. From here, everything would change. With Palpatine dead, Obi-Wan went to the Senate with a group of clones, and they revealed everything. The Jedi were right to try and defeat Palpatine. He was the Separatist leader. He orchestrated the entire war. The Senate was shocked, but the clones had proof, and the Kaminoans backed all of this up. Bail Organa, the man who helped Rex find Obi-Wan, was named Chancellor as the Republic began to rebuild. And with this, the clones were given their own system, a moon-orbiting Kamino, where they could rebuild themselves, and each clone could choose to serve the Republic or live their own life. With the Empire gone, Luke Skywalker was safe, and Obi-Wan moved to this system with the clones for a few years, along with Ahsoka Tano. She was sad to learn of the fate of Rex and Anakin, but she loved the clones. The clone loved these two Jedi. The Empire needed the clones to rise, and it was ultimately their fall, as Palpatine underestimated them from the start. The Jedi Order would rebuild in time, but not for a handful of years, not until Luke and Leia were ready. And that, folks, is our story for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let's go over it a bit, but before we do, question for the comments. So yesterday's video, what if Vader trained Leia? I'm not gonna lie, it was my, in terms of view count, probably the worst one in months. So, just kind of want to know why in the comments. If you did watch it, if you didn't, let me know why not. Just, I like to get feedback when videos perform poorly, or even when they're really good, so let me know what that was, if you liked it, didn't like it. Anyways, about this story. This was one I've wanted to do for a while, but I wasn't exactly sure how. I know there was the clone uprising in Legends that of course failed, and I really wanted it to focus, or at least have Obi-Wan and Rex be the main two. I could have gone more in on which clones did what, but it was all so complicated. I didn't want the story to get so with so many different clones, it's hard not to make it just bouncing back and forth with so many characters doing so many different things. So I tried to really focus in on 2 to 3 characters and, have other names kind of spread throughout as shoutouts rather than going back and forth. And I could have made the takeover of Palpatine take longer, but I thought, with the clones all on one side, what's the resistance exactly? So, made sense to do that quick, and I really liked having the Vader-Rex connection at the end. Let me know what you thought of this. I enjoyed it, and I've got some good ones lined up, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.